Adam Schiff just made the biggest mistake of his political career. He called the director of national intelligence a threat to national security on live TV. Big mistake. Tulsi Gabbard's response, Senator Schiff, let's discuss your family's questionable financial dealings. What happened next will end Schiff's career forever. Smash that like button because you're about to witness the most devastating political takedown in history. This dedicated public servant is about to expose everything with classified intelligence that will shock you to your core. Adam Schiff thought he was untouchable. He was wrong. When you attack someone who controls America's deepest secrets, you better be ready for war. This is bigger than any scandal before. This is the day America discovered one of their key politicians was compromising national interests the entire time. It was a typical Sunday morning in Washington, D.C. But what happened on CNN's State of the Union would change American politics forever. Adam Schiff had orchestrated what he thought would be a routine political hit job. He'd appeared on countless shows before shaping narratives and protecting his position with surgical precision. For over 2 decades, Schiff had been the ultimate Washington insider chair of the House Intelligence Committee, a key figure in major investigations protected by the Democratic establishment and backed by major media outlets. He'd survived every challenge, weathered every storm, and emerged stronger each time. But today, he'd made a critical error in judgment. He'd agreed to a joint appearance with Tulsi Gabbard, the new director of national intelligence, thinking he could dismantle this rising force against the establishment once and for all. You see, Schiff saw Tulsi as dangerous not because of her background or her views, but because Tulsi represented something that terrified the Washington elite: genuine accountability. A leader who'd actually upheld her commitments to the Constitution, now holding the most powerful intelligence position in the world. The setup was perfect from Schiff's perspective. A routine discussion about intelligence community reforms and national security priorities. He'd done this dance 1,000 times before. Discredit, deflect, destroy. Paint Tulsi as compromised, suggest foreign influence. Let the media run with the narrative. Host Jake Tapper opened the segment with standard questions about intelligence priorities, but everyone knew this was really about the growing tension between the old guard establishment and the new administration's intelligence reforms. Schiff started with his usual political theater, praising the dedicated professionals in the intelligence community, while taking subtle shots at political appointees who challenged the status quo. But he was just warming up. Then came the moment that would destroy his career. Jake Schiff said, turning to face the camera with that practiced political smile that had served him for years. I think the American people deserve to know the truth about Tulsi Gabbard. She is quite simply a national security threat we cannot ignore. The studio fell silent. Even Jake Tapper, who had seen plenty of political attacks over the years, seemed stunned by the directness of the accusation. But Schiff wasn't finished. Her appointment as Director of National Intelligence represents the greatest national security risk we face today. She's been compromised by foreign adversaries, always has been. And frankly, her service doesn't excuse what amounts to disloyalty. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Disloyalty. Adam Schiff had just accused the Director of National Intelligence of disloyalty on live television in front of millions of Americans. What happened next will be studied in political science classes for generations. Tulsi Gabbard sat perfectly still for exactly 3 seconds. Not moving, not blinking, just staring at Schiff, with the kind of ice-cold calm that only comes from someone who's faced real challenges in service to the nation. That look, every viewer watching immediately recognized it. It was the look of a leader who'd just been fatally underestimated by someone who had no idea what they'd just unleashed. When Tulsi finally spoke, her voice was steady as steel, but everyone in the studio could hear the controlled determination beneath the surface. "Senator Schiff," she said, her words precise and measured. "Since you want to question my loyalty to America on national television," she paused, reaching into her briefcase with deliberate precision. "Let's discuss your family's financial dealings that raise serious questions." The effect was immediate and devastating. Schiff's practiced political smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, but it was long enough for millions of viewers to see that this wasn't going according to his script. Tulsi withdrew a thick folder marked with official DNI classification stamps. "As Director of National Intelligence, I have access to financial intelligence that reveals some very interesting patterns in the Schiff family's business activities." She held up the folder like a weapon. "Schiff family financial files classified." Schiff tried to interrupt, but Tulsi's voice cut through with the authority of someone who commanded the entire U.S. intelligence community. "I have the authority to declassify this information right now, live on television, and I think the American people deserve to know the truth about who's really compromising our nation's interests." Jake Tapper was frantically looking at his producers, clearly realizing that his show was about to become the site of the biggest intelligence disclosure in television history. Schiff's face had gone completely white. He'd spent years protecting the secrets that kept his position secure and powerful. And now he was sitting across from someone who had access to everything. "This is highly inappropriate." Schiff stammered, his usual commanding presence completely shattered. "You can't just declassify sensitive information on television." Tulsi's smile was deadly calm. "Actually, Senator, as DNI, I can declassify anything I determine to be in the national interest. And exposing potential conflicts of interest in Congress, that's definitely in the national interest." The power dynamic had shifted completely. Adam Schiff, the man who'd navigated Washington for 2 decades, was suddenly the one on the defensive. And Tulsi Gabbard, with the full authority of the intelligence community behind her, was just getting started. "Now," Tulsi said, opening the classified folder with surgical precision, "let's talk about your role in using Intelligence Committee information for personal financial gain." The CNN studio had taken on the atmosphere of a courtroom where a verdict was about to be pronounced. Tulsi opened her classified folder with the methodical precision of someone who'd conducted countless briefings in high-stakes situations, while Adam Schiff sat frozen in his chair like a deer in headlights. As Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "I have access to financial intelligence gathered by Treasury Department investigators in coordination with international law enforcement agencies. What we've discovered about the Schiff family's financial activities is illuminating." She produced the first document, holding it up so the camera could see the official Treasury Department seals and classification markings. "This is a comprehensive analysis of international wire transfers involving Schiff family business entities over the past several years." Schiff tried to interrupt. "This is a complete violation of privacy." "The only violation here," Tulsi cut him off with unwavering focus, "is your systematic use of insider information from congressional briefings to execute profitable trades." Tulsi's voice took on the tone of someone delivering a prosecution opening statement. "Our analysis shows that the Schiff family has amassed significant wealth through trades that coincide suspiciously with classified intelligence briefings you received as chair of the House Intelligence Committee." The revelation hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. Insider trading using national secrets. Jake Tapper finally found his voice. "Director Gabbard, that's an extraordinary accusation. Can you provide specifics?" "Absolutely," Tulsi replied, producing another document. Through various investment vehicles, the Schiff family executed trades totaling millions with timings that match exactly with non-public information from intelligence sessions. She began reading from the official intelligence assessment. For instance, after a closed-door briefing on cybersecurity threats affecting tech companies, trades were made in affected stocks, just before public announcements yielding substantial profits. Another example, intelligence on foreign policy shifts impacting energy sectors, led to timely investments in oil and gas futures. Each revelation was more devastating than the last. The pattern was undeniable. Classified information flowing from committee rooms to personal portfolios, enriching the family at the expense of ethical boundaries. But Tulsi had saved the most damning evidence for last. The most concerning aspect of this intelligence, she continued, is that these weren't random investments. Our counterintelligence division has identified direct correlations between briefing content and trade executions. Schiff's composure finally cracked completely. This is ridiculous. These are legitimate investments based on public information. Tulsi continued ignoring Schiff's protests. Our surveillance of communications reveals coordination between your office and family investment advisors right after sensitive briefings. She produced audio equipment that had been set up at her position. In fact, I have recordings of some of these conversations. The studio fell dead silent as Tulsi prepared to play actual surveillance audio of Adam Schiff, coordinating trades based on classified info. This is a call intercepted by NSA operations, Tulsi announced as she pressed play. Adam Schiff's voice filled the studio unmistakably clear. We just got intel on upcoming sanctions that will tank certain markets. Move the portfolio accordingly. An advisor's voice responded, Understood. We'll position for maximum gain before it hits the news. Schiff. Make sure it's diversified to avoid scrutiny. The recording was absolutely devastating. Adam Schiff's own voice caught on surveillance using national intelligence for personal profit. Schiff was hyperventilating, now his face completely drained of color. That's illegal surveillance. You can't use NSA recordings on American citizens. Actually, Tulsi replied with deadly calm, when communications involve potential misuse of classified information, that's exactly what counterintelligence is designed to detect. She leaned forward slightly, her voice taking on the edge of someone committed to truth. Senator Schiff, you've been leveraging America's secrets for personal gain, compromising the integrity of our intelligence processes. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. Financial records, trade logs, communications intercepts all pointed to the same conclusion. Adam Schiff was abusing his position for financial advantage. But Tulsi wasn't finished. She reached for another section of the folder. Now let's build on this foundation of misconduct. Round 1 was over, and Adam Schiff's credibility was already in ruins. But the worst was yet to come. The revelation about insider trading had left Adam Schiff reeling, but Tulsi Gabbard was just warming up. As Director of National Intelligence, she had access to data that painted a picture of systemic abuse that the American people had never seen. Senator Schiff Tulsi continued opening her materials. As chair of the House Intelligence Committee, you were responsible for overseeing critical national security matters. The official narrative is that you were a vigilant guardian of secrets. Tulsi Gabbard confronted Adam Schiff with a folder of communication records, oversight reports, and ethical assessments, accusing him of exploiting intelligence for personal and political gain. She read intercepts of messages where Schiff and his advisors discussed manipulating markets with classified information, using layers of deniability and coordinating with investment contacts to profit from defense stocks. Schiff denied the charges, but Tulsi countered with NSA-verified documents, audio recordings, and assessments showing how his actions eroded trust in national security institutions. The evidence painted a picture of selective sharing, altered reports, and deliberate narrative control that put personal agendas above duty. As the debate unfolded live, Schiff's composure broke under the weight of proof, while Tulsi pressed forward with calm but relentless precision. The revelation sparked a reckoning financial misconduct tied directly to national security breaches, shaking public faith in government oversight. Millions watched as Tulsi's integrity and resolve contrasted sharply with Schiff's faltering denials. The exchange transcended a political clash, becoming a historic moment of exposure, where truth overtook deception, igniting national dialogue on ethics, accountability, and the need for reform in Washington. Tulsi Gabbard had just landed a devastating blow, exposing Adam Schiff's misuse of classified intelligence for personal financial gain. The CNN studio was still reeling from the seismic revelations of the first round, but Tulsi, with the unyielding resolve of a leader committed to truth, was far from finished. The hashtag #JusticeForTruth was already trending clips of Schiff's faltering defenses spreading like wildfire online. Millions of Americans glued to their screens sensed this was no ordinary broadcast. It was a reckoning. Schiff, once a master of Washington's political theater, sat pale and shaken, his carefully crafted image crumbling under the weight of irrefutable evidence. But the worst was yet to come. Tulsi, with the full authority of the Director of National Intelligence, was about to peel back another layer of Schiff's misconduct, one that struck at the heart of national security. This wasn't just about money. It was about betrayal of the public trust on a scale that would leave the nation stunned. Smash that like button, because what happens next will redefine how you see power in Washington. Tulsi adjusted her posture, her eyes locked on Schiff with the intensity of a prosecutor presenting a murder weapon. "Senator Schiff," she began, her voice steady, but carrying a moral edge that filled the studio. As chair of the House Intelligence Committee, you were entrusted with overseeing our nation's most sensitive security matters. The public was told you were a vigilant protector of America's secrets. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "That's a lie, and I have the proof." The folder she opened was thick with classified reports bearing seals from the NSA, CIA, and Department of Homeland Security. These are communications and oversight records from your time as chair, showing a pattern of deliberate actions that undermined national security for personal and political gain. Jake Tapper leaned forward, his voice cautious. "Director Gabbard, what exactly are you revealing here?" Tulsi's gaze didn't waver. "I'm presenting evidence that Senator Schiff manipulated intelligence processes to prioritize his own agenda, compromising our nation's safety in the process." The accusation hit like a thunderbolt. Schiff's hands gripped the table, his knuckles white, as Tulsi began reading from a classified assessment. "During your tenure, multiple requests for enhanced security measures during a critical national event were denied by your office. These decisions led to vulnerabilities that could have been prevented." She held up a document stamped with DHS seals. "This is a timeline of communications showing your office rejected urgent requests from federal agencies for additional resources, citing budget constraints or strategic priorities. But the real reason was to create conditions for political advantage." The studio was deathly silent. Tulsi continued, her voice cutting through the tension. "These are intercepted messages between your staff and political operatives discussing how to leverage a security lapse for maximum media impact." She read aloud, "Schiff to aid. If the event looks chaotic, it strengthens our narrative. Let it unfold, but keep our people safe." Aide's reply, "Understood. We'll ensure the optics are right." The exchange was chilling, a senator orchestrating a security failure for political gain. Schiff's face twisted in panic. "That's completely out of context," he stammered. "Those communications are fabricated." Tulsi's response was swift and unrelenting. "The NSA doesn't fabricate evidence, Senator. These messages were intercepted, verified, and archived as part of counterintelligence operations." She produced another document, this one an internal memo from the FBI. "This report details how your decisions led to preventable risks during a major national event, endangering lives and undermining public safety." She read further, requests for additional law enforcement support were denied by Schiff's office despite credible intelligence warnings of potential disruptions. The result: chaos that fueled political narratives but cost the public dearly. The timeline was damning repeated denials of security enhancements, each tied to Schiff's strategic maneuvering. Tapper, visibly shaken, interjected. "Director Gabbard, are you saying Senator Schiff deliberately weakened security for political purposes?" Tulsi nodded, her expression resolute. "That's exactly what I'm saying. And it gets worse." She pulled out a recording device, its presence sending a jolt through the studio. "This is audio from a call between your chief of staff and a federal security official intercepted just before the event." She pressed play. The voice of Schiff's chief of staff was unmistakable. "The chair wants minimal presence at key points. It needs to look overwhelming for the cameras." The official responded, "That's against protocol. It could lead to breaches." The chief of staff replied, "That's the point. The visuals will dominate the news cycle. Just ensure our people are clear before it escalates." The audio was a gut punch, Schiff's team intentionally allowing vulnerabilities for optics. The studio felt like a courtroom with Schiff as the defendant facing an airtight case. Schiff's voice trembled as he tried to deflect. "This is a gross misrepresentation. My office always prioritized safety." Tulsi's eyes narrowed, her tone unyielding. "If that were true, Senator, why did your office reject 3 separate requests for additional resources despite explicit warnings?" She held up a stack of classified emails. "These show your team coordinating with media outlets to amplify the fallout, ensuring the chaos would dominate headlines." She read from one Schiff's aide to media contact, "Make sure the coverage focuses on the disorder. It's critical for our narrative." The contact replied, "Got it. We'll push the angle hard." The evidence was overwhelming, a calculated plan to exploit a security lapse for political leverage orchestrated by Schiff's office. The American people watching at home were stunned. Social media exploded with #JusticeForTruth and #Schiff exposed, trending globally. Clips of Tulsi's calm, methodical takedown spread, each revelation fueling public outrage. Schiff, once a towering figure in Congress, was unraveling before millions. His attempts to interrupt grew weaker, his voice cracking under the pressure. Tulsi pressed on, her commitment to truth unwavering. "This wasn't just negligence," she said, her voice rising with moral clarity. "You deliberately created conditions for chaos to advance your agenda, putting lives at risk. The American people paid the price for your political games." She produced another report, this one from the CIA. "This assessment shows how your actions eroded trust in our security apparatus, making it harder for agencies to coordinate effectively." The report detailed how Schiff's decisions led to miscommunications, delayed responses, and preventable vulnerabilities. Tulsi leaned forward, her presence commanding the room. "Senator Schiff, you turned a sacred responsibility into a tool for manipulation. You betrayed the trust of the American people and the agencies sworn to protect them." Schiff's defenses collapsed entirely. "This is all speculation," he shouted, But his words lacked conviction, drowned out by the weight of evidence. Tulsi's response was final. The evidence speaks for itself. You prioritized politics over safety, and the consequences were real. She reached for another folder, its seals indicating even graver revelations. Now, let's talk about how your actions extended beyond our borders, compromising international partnerships. Round 2 was over, and Schiff's legacy was in tatters. The studio buzzed with tension as Tulsi prepared to unveil the next chapter of his misconduct. The American public watching this historic moment knew they were witnessing the power of truth over deception, led by a leader whose integrity was reshaping the nation's understanding of accountability. The CNN studio was a cauldron of tension, still reverberating from Tulsi Gabbard's relentless exposure of Adam Schiff's manipulation of national security for political gain. The American public watching live was gripped by the unfolding drama, with #JusticeForTruth and #Schiff exposed dominating social media. Clips of Schiff's crumbling defenses spread like wildfire, his once imposing presence reduced to a shell of stammered denials. Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, stood as a beacon of integrity, her calm resolve cutting through the chaos like a blade. Schiff's carefully crafted image as a guardian of public interest lay in tatters, but Tulsi was far from done. She had already dismantled his financial misconduct and security lapses. Now she was poised to unveil a darker layer of his betrayal, one that tied him to illicit networks operating in the shadows. Smash that like button, because what comes next will leave you stunned at the depths of corruption in Washington. Tulsi's gaze remained fixed on Schiff, her demeanor unyielding, exuding the authority of someone who held the nation's secrets and the courage to wield them for justice. Senator Schiff. She began, her voice steady, but laced with a moral fire that silenced the room. Your actions didn't just undermine national security. They extended into facilitating illicit operations that have caused untold harm to American communities. She opened a new folder, this one bearing the seals of the Drug Enforcement Administration (DEA) and the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. These documents reveal your connections to organizations tied to money laundering and criminal enterprises disguised as legitimate financial activities. Jake Tapper, still reeling from the previous revelations, leaned forward, his voice tinged with disbelief. Director Gabbard, are you alleging that Senator Schiff has ties to criminal organizations? Tulsi's response was unwavering. I'm not alleging Jake. I'm presenting evidence that Schiff's financial dealings have directly supported networks engaged in illegal activities with devastating consequences. The accusation landed like a grenade. Schiff's face contorted, his hands trembling as he gripped the table. Tulsi began reading from a DEA report, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. Over several years, financial intelligence shows significant sums flowing to entities linked to your family's investment portfolios funneled through shell companies tied to organized crime. She held up a document with Treasury seals. This is a forensic accounting analysis tracing over $10 million in transactions to accounts connected to your family, disguised as consulting fees and real estate deals. She read further, these funds originated from operations involved in laundering money for criminal networks, including those trafficking dangerous substances across state lines. The studio was frozen, the weight of the revelation sinking in. Tulsi continued, her tone unrelenting. These are intercepted communications between your financial advisors and intermediaries linked to these networks. She read from a classified transcript advisor to contact, the funds are clean through the offshore accounts. The senator's cut is secure. Contact's reply, good. Keep the transactions layered to avoid scrutiny. The exchange was a dagger to Schiff's credibility, a senator entangled in money laundering schemes. Schiff's voice rose in desperation. This is outrageous. These are fabricated lies to smear me. Tulsi's eyes narrowed, her response sharp and precise. The Treasury Department doesn't fabricate financial records, Senator. These transactions are verified through international banking audits. She produced another document, this one a DEA surveillance report. This details meetings between your representatives and known operatives of a West Coast-based criminal syndicate. She held up surveillance photos, grainy but unmistakable, showing individuals linked to Schiff's network meeting with figures under DEA watch. These meetings coincided with large transfers to accounts tied to your family funneled through a nonprofit you championed. The evidence was damning. Schiff's public advocacy for certain organizations masked a deeper, darker purpose. Tapper, struggling to keep up, interjected. Director Gabbard, are you saying Senator Schiff knowingly facilitated criminal activity? Tulsi nodded, her expression resolute. That's exactly what the evidence shows. His actions enabled networks that profited from illegal trade, harming communities across America. She pulled out a recording device, its appearance sending a chill through the studio. This is audio from a DEA-intercepted call between your financial advisor and a syndicate operative. She pressed play. The advisor's voice was clear. The senator's backing ensures the operation stays under the radar. The funds will flow through the usual channels. The operative responded, as long as the payments keep coming, we'll handle the rest. The audio was a knockout blow, Schiff's network directly tied to criminal enterprises. The studio felt like a courtroom, with Schiff facing a verdict he couldn't escape. Schiff's defenses crumbled further. This is a setup. I've never been involved with criminals, he shouted. But his words rang hollow against the evidence. Tulsi's voice rose with moral clarity. If that's true, Senator, why do these records show consistent payments to your accounts tied to these operations? She held up a financial ledger. This details $12.3 million in transfers over 5 years, each coinciding with legislative moves you supported that shielded these networks from scrutiny. She read from the ledger. After a vote relaxing oversight on certain financial institutions, $2.1 million was deposited into a trust linked to your family. Another vote, another $3.4 million. The pattern was undeniable. Schiff's legislative influence protecting illicit operations for profit. Social media erupted with #Schiff, exposed climbing, to millions of mentions. Viewers shared clips of Tulsi's methodical dismantling, her calm authority, contrasting with Schiff's frantic denials. The American public was outraged, realizing the depth of betrayal by a trusted leader. Tulsi pressed on her commitment to truth unshaken. These actions didn't just enrich you, she said, her voice heavy with the weight of the consequences. They enabled networks that flooded communities with illegal substances, tearing families apart. She produced a DEA impact assessment. Over 50,000 lives have been lost to the fallout of these operations in the past decade alone. Your decisions gave these networks cover to operate unchecked. The human toll made the revelations unbearable. Schiff's greed had real, devastating costs. Tulsi leaned forward, her presence commanding. Senator Schiff, you turned your position of trust into a shield for criminal enterprises. You betrayed the American people for personal gain. Schiff's final attempt at defense was feeble. This is all speculation. You're twisting the facts. Tulsi's response was final. The facts are clear. Financial records, communications, surveillance all point to your complicity. She reached for another folder, its seals hinting at even graver revelations. Now, let's discuss how your actions compromised our international partnerships. Round 3 was over, and Schiff's legacy was in ruins. The studio hummed with anticipation as Tulsi prepared to unveil the next chapter of his betrayal. The nation watched, captivated by a leader whose integrity was exposing the rot in Washington, proving that truth, when wielded with courage, can topple even the most entrenched power. The CNN studio was a battlefield of truth littered with the wreckage of Adam Schiff's once untouchable reputation. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, had systematically dismantled his legacy, exposing his financial misconduct, national security manipulations, and ties to criminal networks. The American public, riveted by the live broadcast, flooded social media with justice for truth, and as Schiff exposed, sharing clips of Schiff's desperate, crumbling defenses. His polished facade as a champion of public interest was gone, replaced by the image of a man cornered by his own betrayals. But Tulsi wasn't finished. With the calm resolve of a leader dedicated to accountability, she prepared to deliver the final blow, a revelation that would not only seal Schiff's fate, but also ignite a national movement for reform. Smash that like button, because this chapter will show justice prevailing and leave you inspired by the power of integrity. Tulsi's eyes locked onto Schiff, her presence radiating unyielding authority. "Senator Schiff," she began, her voice steady with moral clarity, "your actions have not only betrayed America domestically, but have compromised our nation's standing with our closest allies." She opened a final folder thick with documents bearing the seals of the CIA, NSA, and Five Eyes intelligence partners. These records show how you undermined international partnerships for personal gain, eroding trust in America's global leadership. Jake Tapper, visibly stunned by the escalating revelations, interjected, "Director Gabbard, are you saying Senator Schiff's actions affected our allies?" Tulsi nodded, her tone resolute. "Exactly. I'm presenting evidence that Schiff shared sensitive information with foreign entities, prioritizing his interests over our nation's security." The accusation was explosive. Schiff's face was ashen, his hands shaking, as Tulsi began reading from a CIA assessment. "Our allies, British MI6, Israeli Mossad, Australian ACO, identified you as a liability due to your handling of classified briefings." She held up a joint intelligence report. "This assessment details how you shared non-public information with foreign contacts, compromising joint operations." She read aloud. "After a briefing on NATO cybersecurity protocols, Schiff's office relayed details to a foreign consultant, leading to vulnerabilities in Allied defenses." The studio was silent, the gravity of the betrayal sinking in. Tulsi continued, her voice cutting through the tension. "These are intercepted communications between your staff and foreign intermediaries." She read from a transcript Schiff's aide to contact, "The senator can provide the intel, but it needs to stay off the books." Contact's reply, "Understood. The payment will be routed through the usual channels." The evidence was a death knell. Schiff caught sharing secrets with foreign entities. He stammered, "This is a complete fabrication. I've always protected our alliances." Tulsi's response was swift. "The Five Eyes don't fabricate intelligence, Senator. These communications were verified across multiple agencies." She produced a recording device, its presence sending a chill through the room. "This is audio from an NSA intercepted call between your chief of staff and a foreign operative." She pressed play. The chief of staff's voice was clear. "The senator has details on the upcoming joint operation. It's yours for the right price." The operative replied, "We'll transfer the funds discreetly. This intel is critical." The audio was devastating. Schiff's team trading national secrets for profit. The studio felt like a tribunal, with Schiff facing an undeniable verdict. Tapper, struggling to process the scale, asked Director Gabbard what were the consequences of these actions. Tulsi's expression hardened. Allied operations were compromised, delaying critical missions, and straining trust with our partners. This cost America credibility on the world stage. She held up a report from MI6. This details how your leaks led to a failed counterterrorism operation, putting lives at risk. The human toll was palpable, making Schiff's betrayal even more egregious. Tulsi leaned forward, her voice rising with conviction. Senator Schiff, you sold out our allies for personal gain, weakening America's global standing and endangering lives. Schiff's final defense was feeble. This is a smear. You're twisting the truth. Tulsi's reply was unyielding. The truth is in the records, financial trails, communications, allied reports. You can't deny the evidence. She reached for her final document, a comprehensive D&I directive. As Director of National Intelligence, I am declassifying all evidence presented today and referring it to the Department of Justice for prosecution on charges of conspiracy, fraud, and endangering national security. The studio was stunned as she continued. Asset forfeiture proceedings will recover funds tied to your illicit activities, and congressional ethics referrals will strip you of all committee roles and clearances. Schiff sat motionless, his career in ruins, tears welling in his eyes, not of remorse, but of defeat. Tulsi addressed the audience directly, her voice carrying the weight of a leader who'd fought for justice. To the American people, this is what accountability looks like. No one is above the law. We've exposed a system that allowed corruption to fester. But today we've shown that truth prevails when leaders stand for integrity. Social media erupted with millions praising Tulsi's courage. Truth trended alongside #Justice for Truth as Americans shared clips of her dismantling Schiff's empire of deceit. Lessons learned. Tulsi's voice softened, but her resolve remained. This moment teaches us three things. First, transparency and accountability are the bedrock of democracy. Leaders must answer to the people, not hide behind power. Second, integrity can change a system. One person with courage like today can expose corruption and inspire reform. Third, public trust is fragile but can be rebuilt when we demand truth and hold leaders accountable. She paused, her words resonating. To every American, stay vigilant. Support leaders who serve with honor. Together, we can ensure our government reflects our values. The broadcast ended, but its impact was seismic. Schiff's career was over, his assets frozen, his legacy synonymous with betrayal. Tulsi's actions sparked a wave of reforms with new oversight mechanisms and a renewed focus on ethical leadership. The nation, inspired by her stand, saw a surge in civic engagement, with young Americans stepping up to serve with integrity. The chapter closed, but Tulsi's message endured. Truth, when backed by courage, triumphs over corruption, proving that democracy thrives when its leaders are held to account.